So, the title of today's show is called One Finger at a Time. And there's a couple different meanings for that. It was inspired by Jeff Booth's interview that I watched yesterday. And so the first part of that is like the one finger at a time. Think of the flipping somebody off. And I really want you to kind of the overlying theme of what I'm about to talk about here is that we are all nodes. You think about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network and the nodes that are out there, and how every 10 minutes a new updated version of the blockchain gets sent out to all those nodes. And the more nodes we have, the more powerful, secure, stronger the Bitcoin network is. So I really want you to think about yourself as a Bitcoin node here, because the more nodes that we accrue here over time, the faster the faster adoption will increase. And that's kind of our whole goal here, right? Because we know two things. We know that the Bitcoin supply is going to continue to go down every 4 years forever. We know that. And it already has a lower inflation rate than gold has. At this point, 15 years into this thing, it already has a lower inflation rate than gold, which was previously the hardest money out there, the most scarce asset out there. So that's the first thing. The second one is that there's approximately 3 or 4 million coins that have been lost by people in the early days who either got hacked, locked themselves out, got taken down through an exchange. I forget the one here in Canada that went down. But let's say that there's 3 or 4 million lost coins. That's only going to get higher here, because I'm sure within the last 4 or 5 years, especially 2021 run up, there was a bunch of people who bought Bitcoin. And I don't think we've actually considered them, a portion of them, to be in the lost coins yet, the 3 or 4 million. I think it's already higher than that. And I think as we move on here and as more and more people start to dip their toes in Bitcoin who don't really know what they're doing in terms of securing their Bitcoin, that amount is only going to go up. So the actual supply of new Bitcoins going down, the amount of lost coins bringing the total supply of Bitcoin down over time. Those are the certainties within Bitcoin. Those are the things that we know are going to happen regardless of what we do, right? Bitcoin doesn't care. Anything could happen in the world. Bitcoin does not care what's going on. It just does its thing. Every 10 minutes, a new block is produced. Within that block, there's a bunch of transactions. Me sending Bitcoin to you, you sending Bitcoin to the rescue dogs. That's it. Actually, that's not on layer one. Bad example. But you know what I mean. That's all there is. Every 10 minutes, there's a new block. It gets sent out to every person running a Bitcoin node. So those are the certainties. But the other part of it, the part that we have the ability to influence and change, is the demand part. So there's supply demand. I call Bitcoin the greatest economic recipe in history because of that. Even if demand flatlined for the next 50 years, the price and the purchasing power within Bitcoin would increase simply because of the supply. The supply is going to keep going down forever, and we assume that the demand is going to keep going up forever. So that's why people say Bitcoin is going to go up and to the right forever, for those two reasons. So the thing that we do have the ability to influence is the demand side of things. And the faster that we can get people to really understand what's happening here and push the adoption, the faster we can move out of the fiat system. And that's the end goal here with everything. So one finger at a time is just, we have to start calling out the bullshit in life. That's kind of like the first version of this. We have to. And whether that has to do with the Olympics, the gender stuff, the banks, the elections, whatever that is, if you're part of a conversation or if you hear your friends or your family talking about something that you know is completely wrong, don't be a dick about it. But we have to start calling this stuff out. We have to. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. If you know something's true in your heart and in your mind, and you're afraid to talk about that, then you're part of the problem. Even though you don't agree with what they're saying, you're not doing anything to change the direction here. So the first part of this, one finger at a time, is just don't be afraid to tell somebody to go fuck themselves. Honestly, whether it's your friend, your family, your coworker, it doesn't matter. Family's going to be there regardless. You might not get along with them, but everybody else, and I've been through this in the last 4 years, a lot of it. And I've lost a lot of friends and relationships going through it, but I'm okay with it. I really am. And I think that if I didn't do that and I didn't, stick my neck out a little bit, I would have a lot of regrets later in life. And so it is time. Now is the time that we have to we can't be afraid to tell somebody to go fuck themselves. And whether they're trying to make you do something you don't want to, or they're talking about something that you know is wrong, just don't be afraid to call it out. And if you lose them as a friend, that's fine. That's fine. If they're not willing to understand your point of view, then it's probably for the best anyways. But so that's kind of the first part of it, and that's the aggressive part of it. But the other part too is the one person at a time, one finger at a time. That's what I want you to think about here, because this whole thing is only going to happen one person at a time, one day at a time, and one finger at a time. We are nodes here. We're all nodes, and the more we can influence and impact other people to not necessarily like see the benefits of Bitcoin, but try to at least open their mind, try to get them to that point where their mind's open, and maybe they have the thought in their back of their head that maybe the money is the problem, because that's what we all know. That's the secret that we all share, is that within every issue that's happening in the world right now, the core of that is the fiat dollar. Point at whatever you want to. The core problem there is the fiat dollar. And so the faster we can not convince, open people's minds. That's all you want to do. Just every person you come in contact with, try to open their mind up a little bit. That's it. That's all that you can do. So one person at a time. And the one finger at a time, this really resonated with me, because that's what Jeff Booth was talking about. He said people are going to get there one finger at a time as we try to pull people away from the old system, the old fiat system that they're clinging to, because there's still so many people out there who are truly benefiting from that system still. Their paycheck relies on that system continuing. Think about how fat our government's been getting, how many people they've added to the government. Like, I don't know what the percentage of the total employment here in Canada actually works for the government, but it is catastrophic. So as we try to pry them out of that old system, open their minds and try to see, what the actual problem here is, they're going to be clinging, they're going to be holding on to that system. And that's what he said, one finger at a time. That's how we're going to get them over from the fiat system onto a Bitcoin standard, or at least have their minds open up, one finger at a time. But I want you to think about your own experience, because for me, think about what pried you away from that system. It might not have been one event that you can really reflect on, but it was a series of events. And I guarantee that every person watching this or listening to this later had that experience. And for me, it was 2020. It was what happened with the pandemic. I was told that I was an idiot, even though I was I was consuming my life with trying to figure out what's really going on here. And you go down 100 different rabbit holes that way, but you compare it to somebody who didn't do any sort of looking into this, and they're the ones telling you that you're an idiot. So that was part of it for me. And so at my job, I was a manager at a big accounting firm here in Canada. And my job was trying to say, you're either going to do this or we're going to make your life very painful. And so they made me, there was like a couple of us, we probably had 40 or 50 people in the office. I think there was 2 or 3 of us who said, we're not doing this. So you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, but we're not doing this. And they said, you can't come into the office now. You have to work from home. So I was in pretty much like solitary confinement, doing something I didn't necessarily love doing, and being blacklisted and banished and alienated by the company for the decision that a personal decision that should have been absolutely nobody's fucking business except my own. So that's what pried me away from that system. That was the kind of the final finger there, I think, that took me away from that. But you have to keep in mind here that not everybody has been through that yet. Not everybody has had their big moment or their, significant part of their life where that happened. Not everybody has had that. A lot of people just went along with it. They said, yeah, that's fine, whatever. I want to be able to go sit at a restaurant and hang out with my friends, go on a trip. So I'll do it. I don't care. So they didn't go through the same thing that we did or that I did. And that could be a variety of things. It doesn't have to be necessarily related to COVID. I think that there's been a lot of people who are here earlier than the pandemic. Maybe they were saying something online that the overlords didn't like. They froze their bank account. There was a lot of people who that was their last finger when they had their bank account frozen by the government here in Canada for supporting a peaceful protest against them. But not everybody has gone through that yet. And I think that, as we go through these different things here in the news and in the geopolitical world, people are every single day are having their last finger pried away from that system. And that's who's joining Bitcoin. That's who's joining Nostr. That's who's watching these videos instead of watching the mainstream news. So you just have to keep in mind here that, it's going to happen, but they just haven't been there yet. So kind of the moral of that story is that even though you see a whole bunch of people out in your life, whether that's your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your best friends, your coworkers, even though they're not Bitcoiners today, that doesn't mean that they're a lost cause. That doesn't mean that they're a different segment of the population than you are. They just haven't went through that experience yet where their last finger hasn't been taken off of that old system yet. They're still there. But, as I said, we're going to, regardless of it's here in Canada or somewhere else on Earth, they're going to go through that because things are going to get worse. Sorry, I can't believe what's happening in the yard here with these birds. It's very distracting. I don't know what's going on. It's kind of weird, honestly. But so it'll happen. It'll happen. And we have to be both patient and we have to be a little bit persistent, I think, and not pushing Bitcoin on people, but really trying to have them question that. And, the more that we can do before something like happens, the easier it'll be to pry them away from the old system. So it is going to happen. And when it happens, that is the part of the equation, the supply and demand. That is the one thing that we actually can impact, is the demand side. We have the ability to change that. And I know it's easy to think that we're just a very small segment and, who the hell am I? But it does take one person at a time, one day at a time, and one finger at a time. That's the last piece of this equation here, is one finger at a time. I see Frog Friend 17 over in Zap.stream. I like his, he's a pretty good follow on Nostr. I like him or her. And my Path to Fire Zap 21 sats, another 21 sats. Thank you. All right, let's catch up on some chats here, and then we'll call it a day. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is just be patient with it. Understand that not everybody's where you are. Not everybody's experienced the same thing that you have. Not everybody has had that moment that pried you away from the old system. Not everybody's gone through that yet, but they will as things get more painful here and as things get crazier here in the world. I know it seems like we're kind of peak right now, but think about the people who are still holding on to that old system and still are under the false illusion that system's going to continue. It's not. We know that, but over time they'll understand that as well. So have patience, have persistence, and just keep pushing forward. It's the only thing that we can do. I know that there's a lot of shitty days as a Bitcoiner, but there's going to be a lot of good days coming. And beyond that, days that we can't even imagine.